Hello and welcome. Recently, I came across this video of Donald Trump talking to reporters, and he said he was going to Fort Knox to check if the gold is actually there. And I was like, wait, what? Why make such a big deal out of it? You're the president. Can't you just walk in? And then there were all those headlines with Elon Musk saying he wants an audit. That's when it hit me. Hold on, why are some of the most powerful people in the world so curious about this place? And what do I actually know about Fort Knox? We all grew up hearing the phrase as secure as Fort Knox. It's practically a synonym for untouchable. But the truth is, no one really knows what's behind those massive doors. Gold bars, government secrets, nothing at all. The deeper I looked, the stranger the story got. Presidents, wars, conspiracies, even a James Bond villain. And the more I learned, the more I started to wonder. Is Fort Knox really the world's safest vault? Or it's just world's best cover story? Let's find out. Ever since coins were invented, gold has been go-to metal to make them. Up until 70s, most currencies were tied to the US dollar, and the dollar was tied to gold. That system is long gone now, but gold? It's still seen as one of the most solid, reliable assets in the world. And when it comes to running the kind of financial machine the US has, you need a lot of gold. But where would you keep all of it? Well, there's one place that stands out. One place often called the most secure vault on Earth. Yep, I'm talking about Fort Knox, the giant gold vault at the heart of the America's financial system. Technically, Fort Knox is a US Army base in Kentucky. But let's be real, when people say Fort Knox, they almost always talking about the gold vault. Right now, it's holding about 4,500 tons of gold bars. At today's prices, the stash is worth about 350, 400 billion. That's like 5 Estonia's GDP or 3 New York City budgets, just sitting there in one place. Picture this, the 1930s, deep in the Great Depression. President Roosevelt is in a tough spot. The economy is tanking and he knows the country won't survive without printing a lot of money. But there is a problem. Back then the US dollar was tied to gold, and that meant he couldn't just crank up the printing press. So Roosevelt makes a bold move. He signs an executive order to nationalize gold. What does that mean? Basically, every citizen and business had to turn in their gold, coins, bars, jewelry, to the government. In return, they would pay a fixed price. And funny enough, one official later said Roosevelt used to come up with the gold price while eating breakfast. And one morning he raised it by 21 cents, because 21 was his lucky number. This plan worked. The government ended up collecting around 500 tons of gold. Back then, the gold reserves were stored in New York and Philadelphia. But those vaults didn't have enough space for all these newly gathered treasures. Plus, military leaders were worried. Those coastal cities were too exposed. What if there was an attack from the sea or air? So they decided to build a new, ultra-secure vault far inland, protected by Appalachian Mountains. By 1936, construction was done. The cost? Around $9 million. Not bad for something so iconic. The vault was built on a 17-hectare site right next to a military base named after the first US Secretary of War, Henry Knox. That's where the name Fort Knox comes from. As soon as the workers were gone, the real operation began, moving the gold in. It was top secret and took about 6 months. Postal trucks pick up the gold in New York and Philadelphia, transfer it into armored trains, and then the military took over in Kentucky. People were seriously worried about theft, so every step of the journey was like a carefully choreographed play. Trucks only moved at night. Trains didn't follow regular schedules, and decoy trains ran on other routes to throw off anyone watching. In the end, Fort Knox ended up holding about half of the gold the US owned at the time. When World War II broke out, the United States quickly stepped up its defense game. Coastal cities were seen as vulnerable, so Fort Knox became more than just a gold vault. It turned into the safe haven for just about anything valuable. In 1941, some of the most important documents in the US history, the original Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and handwritten speeches of American presidents, were quietly moved from Washington, D.C. to Fort Knox for safekeeping. And after the US officially entered the war, the vault got even busier. Gold from European countries was brought over for protection, and the total amount of stored gold nearly tripled. Even the UK sent over the Scottish Crown, the Sword of State, and the Scepter of Edward VII. There was also the Holy Crown of Hungary, taken by the Nazis during their retreat into Austria. American troops intercepted it, and guess what? It ended up in Fort Knox for the next 40 years. At one point, relics from almost 20 European countries were being held there. Fort Knox was like a sort of world's emergency jewelry box. And now, one of the strangest chapters in Fort Knox story, the Cold War. In the 50s, the US Department of Defense started stockpiling opium and morphine in the vault. Yeah, not gold, not jewelries, opium. The government was genuinely worried. If another war broke out and poppy supplies were cut off, how would they produce painkillers? So they created a national backup. Over the years, they ended up with 31 tons of narcotics. That's enough morphine to keep the entire country medicated for the whole year. Fast forward to 90s, the Cold War is over, global trade is stable again, and there is no longer a need to keep painkiller ingredients there. But now the government had a different problem. What would you do with 31 tons of narcotics you legally can't sell? After some years of silence, the US Treasury finally said that the drugs were gone. Destroyed, given away, quietly disappeared, no one really knows. Fort Knox keeps its secrets well. Okay, let's pretend for a second. You officially lost your mind, gathered a crew and decided to rob Fort Knox. Obviously, you won't get away with all the gold, that will take months, but even one truck could get you around $2 billion. Not bad, right? So here's the plan. You find a used truck, grab a couple of carts for moving gold bars and set off with your team of equally crazy friends. First stop, the military base. It's not just a checkpoint. We're talking about a full tank division and about 10,000 US soldiers. Let's just say somehow you make it through. Next, you need to deal with the 10-meter electric barrier. Turn it off and it will wake up 3 different military bases in Kentucky. But maybe you've got some friends in high places who all happen to fall asleep that night. Then comes a lovely green lawn, which is also minefield. With metal detectors in hand, you and your team carefully tiptoe your way across. Now you're face to face with Fort Knox security, 200 elite guards. But they're not the only thing stopping you. You still have to get through a special door that can only be opened with a tactical nuclear device. No big deal, right? Suppose you do manage to get inside. You head underground about 4 meters down, and now you're standing in front of the vault door. Half a meter thick, 20 tons of solid metal. There are 13 international classes of security doors. Your home or office probably has around 1 to 4. Banks use level 5, 6, maybe 7. The door to the Fort Knox vault, level 13. That's the top. You can't drill it, burn it, or blow it open. The only way is the code. But here's the catch. No one knows the full code. It's split between 4 employees, and their schedules rotate randomly every week. So even they don't know who will be on duty together. But maybe somehow you figured it out. After a few intense conversations, you convince each person to type in their part of the code. One of them, hands shaking, presses the final button and the door opens. And what do you see? The New York Times described it like this: from floor to ceiling, stacked 3 meters high, 36,000 gold bars glowing in the dim light. To fill up just one truck, you need about 80 trips. An important tip: don't forget the shoes. Before you even think about touching the gold, there is one small but crucial detail: footwear. Gold bars are heavy. Drop one on your foot and you'll be meeting your bones in X-ray form. So yeah, if you're going to play Gold Pirate, make sure you dress the part. Anyway, let's say you carefully tiptoe back across the minefield, load up your truck with all those beautiful bars, and drive off into the sunset. Or better yet, the sunrise. Night makes for better cover, right? Now for the final step, selling the gold. Here's where it gets tricky. You'll need a buyer who won't ask too many questions. Chances are you need to melt everything down and sell it off in small chunks, flying under the radar. But hey, after about a year of risky business, you might just make it to millionaire status. That is if you didn't mess up a single step. You remembered to avoid the night vision cameras. You left 0 DNA behind. And the most importantly, you were actually right about how the security system works. Because here's the thing, everything we know about Fort Knox is based on public sources, most of them from the early 2000s. For all we know, they've added lasers, motion detectors, even heat sensors since then. So yeah, good luck. The phrase "secure as Fort Knox" has become a global metaphor for something impenetrable. Even Samsung named their phone security system after it. But plot twist, there is one recorded breach of Fort Knox. Well, kind of. It happened in a movie. You might have guessed it, Goldfinger, the third James Bond film, starring the legendary Sean Connery and featuring a squadron of stunning pilots led by the unforgettable Pussy Galore. The film introduced the world to the villain Auric Goldfinger. His name Auric is the aurum, Latin for gold. But here's the wild part. Goldfinger didn't want to steal the gold. His plan was to make it useless. He was going to detonate a dirty bomb inside Fort Knox, contaminating the gold with radiation for decades. That would make US gold reserves untouchable, driving global prices through the roof. And just like that, Goldfinger becomes a billionaire, and China becomes a superpower. His strategy? Knock out the entire base with the gas bombs, laser his way into the vault, and blow the whole thing up. Thankfully, Pussy Galore had other ideas. She fell for Bond, well, who doesn't, and tipped off the US military. Turns out that gas was fake, just a smokescreen, literally. Goldfinger's plan was foiled, and the world was saved by charm and one very well-timed betrayal. Goldfinger left more than just shaken martinis and classic one-liners. It shaped how millions of people imagine Fort Knox. Funny thing, the filmmakers weren't allowed to shoot inside the vault, of course. But thanks to some very persuasive producers, the escadron flyover scene was filmed at the real Fort Knox. Eyewitnesses later recalled how nerve-wracking it was. Even with the permission, machine guns on the towers tracked their planes, and any car trying to get a close-up shot was stopped instantly by loudspeakers. The set they've built for the vault, pure imagination. It looked more like a high-tech prison than the actual layout we've seen in rare 70s photos. But the scenes were so convincing that the film crew had to post armed guards, just in case someone got ideas about stealing the fake gold bars. So, besides the 4,500 tons of gold bars, which is already wild, Fort Knox also holds a few priceless artifacts. Some of foreign treasures like British or Hungarian crowns, of course, have been returned, but the US has some pretty cool relics on its own. One of stars of the vault, a coin called the Double Eagle. It costs just about $20 by face value, but collectors would pay over $11 million for it. That makes it the third most valuable coin in the world. Another interesting item that isn't made of gold is the Sacagawea dollar, a basic copper coin that normally wouldn't turn heads, but in 1999, 12 of these coins went to space on the Columbia shuttle. They orbited Earth for 5 days and never released to the public. No one knows exactly what they actually worth, but one thing's for sure, they're not your average pocket change. Naturally, with all this security, Fort Knox has become a magnet for conspiracy theories. Why? That's easy. Almost everything about it is classified. The vault's layout, its defenses, even the exact amount of gold inside. It's the perfect recipe for speculation. And the most popular theory? The vault is actually empty. This idea really took off in the 70s thanks to Peter David Better, a former high-level finance official turned full-time conspiracy theorist. According to him, The world was secretly run by Rockefellers, Zionists, and the Kremlin. Henry Kissinger, yeah, he's supposedly a robot. And most of the Fort Knox gold sold off by European bankiers. This theory made such waves that in 1974 a huge press delegation was allowed into Fort Knox, including the director of the US Mint and hundreds of journalists. It was the second time anyone outside the government had been let in. The first was Roosevelt during the construction. The reporters didn't find anything suspicious and things calmed down for a while. But after the 2008 financial crisis, theorists came back hard. Some photos started circulating online showing what looked like empty vaults. Fox News aired segments questioning the gold reserves, and Senator Ron Paul publicly said he didn't trust the Fed's numbers. Conspiracists claimed the gold has been sold to prop the economy. The rest was stolen by corrupt officials, or even worse, the bars were fake. In 2017, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin visited Fort Knox for the third time and tweeted that the gold is safe. But of course, that didn't stop the rumors. And then the really wild stuff. Some say the vault holds frozen bodies of the world leaders waiting to be revived. Others believe alien remains from the Roswell crash are stored there. One theory even claims it's secretly a bioweapons facility. But my favorite one is there is a tiny little comment from a US Mint official once mentioned an emergency escape tunnel, just in case someone ever got trapped behind the 20-ton vault door. The catch? It only opens from the inside and only if main door is shut. So that one detail sparked a whole new theory. A poor employee was once accidentally locked inside, and it starved to death before anyone noticed. Honestly, Fort Knox attracts this kind of storytelling not just because of the gold, but because of the mystery. No cameras, no detailed tours, just silence, steel, and stories. And maybe that's what makes it so fascinating. So maybe Fort Knox is just what they say it is. A giant vault full of gold, heavily guarded and mostly forgotten by the public. Or maybe it's something more, a monument to secrecy, a symbol of how little we're allowed to know about the things that hold real power. Gold, documents, drugs, conspiracy, whatever's locked behind that door, one thing for sure. Fort Knox isn't just a vault. It's a story we've only scratched the surface of. Thank you. Good night.